Hello everyone, once again it's your pal Jeff with another hopefully quicker video than the last one. Talking about this time new releases, or actually new vinyl, and a few new arrivals. The majority of vinyl that I get is overwhelmingly old and used, but there are some reissues that have been coming out that I just can't resist, and I was going to show you a couple of them that I picked up recently. I don't know how many of you out there have ever heard of a guy called Brian Eno. Some of you might know him as a producer for bands like U2 and David Bowie, among others. But in the 70s, he released a string of albums, solo, and they've been reissued recently, and I picked up two of them. The first one being Another Green World. These were originally single disc albums, and these reissues have expanded them into double album size because of two reasons. The first being that these reissues have been half-speed remastered, which means that the cutting lathe that makes the master lacquer that the records are pressed from is run at half the speed. And the theory behind that is that it makes a deeper, more pronounced groove, which improves sound quality. The other reason is that these are 45 RPM discs. So even though it is 12-inch album size, these are played at 45 RPM, and the reason for that being is the higher speed is supposed to improve the fidelity of the sound. I've listened to this album before. I kind of know what it is. I haven't listened to this actual copy to tell you how much better it sounds compared to the original single disc version, but I'll let you know. Let me show you the back cover. This album originally came out in 1975, and like I said, it's expanded to 2 records. The other album by him that I got is called Before and After Science. This is also half-speed remastered, and it's also 45 RPM, which also makes it a 2-disc set. There's the back. These are gatefolds too. I suppose I should have shown them to you. Okay, let me show you the gatefold to Another Green World. It's really not that much to see. It basically just lists the songs and the personnel on the tracks. Along with those two, I'd gone to Nashville a couple of weekends ago with my wife to see a Roger Waters concert, and that is a whole video in itself, because let me just say the concert was amazing. It was probably the best live show that I've ever seen. But being in Nashville, I also knew that Third Man Records is based in Nashville. One of the stores is based in Nashville, so we made a little side trip there on that weekend, and I picked up a couple of records. First one being White Stripes, the complete John Peel sessions. If you don't know who John Peel is, he had a radio show of his own on the BBC, which was rock-based, and this was the early appearances of the White Stripes when they were just coming up. Here's the back cover. This is also a double album. This, I believe, is on colored vinyl. Let me just show you. Nope, I take it back. It's on white vinyl. I thought this was on red. That one is in white vinyl. I think the other disc is in red. Let me see. Yes. There you go. Clear red vinyl. This should be interesting because I've been a fan of Jack White and the White Stripes for quite a long time. And to go along with that one, I also picked up the first solo Jack White album, Blunderbuss. This came out a couple of years ago. I didn't have it on vinyl. Now I do. This is just a regular black vinyl album. I only say that because most of Third Man records usually come in some form of colored vinyl. And actually the black vinyl is almost rarer than colored, so. Third and finally, it's probably the most interesting collection, is called American Epic: The Sessions. If you'd seen the PBS specials that were out a couple months ago called American Epic, it talked all about different forms of American music, early blues, bluegrass, many different genres, Cajun, and if you were interested at all in the history of American music, that is definitely a must-see. This is a triple album, and it's by contemporary artists like Jack White. He does a track. Beck. Who else does it here? The Alabama Shakes do a track. There's a whole list of people, but what they did with this was they recreated the recording lathe that was used in the 1920s and 30s, and every performance was recorded live with no overdubs or nothing added to it. Just whatever performance they got was what made it on this record, which should make it pretty interesting. Let me show you inside this gatefold here. It's a picture of the lathe that they used to record, and basically once those counterweights that you see over here on the side reached the floor, your time was up. So that gave the artist about 3 minutes to do their recording. This is on white vinyl. I'm not going to pull the records out to show you. You know what white vinyl looks like. And there's full of, it's going to be a very interesting listen. This is going to take some time being a triple album. So I was pretty happy with those purchases, and not everything is all old vinyl from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There's good new stuff being put out too. That being said, I did get a few new arrivals of old vinyl in the mail, and I'm going to show them to you quickly. On YouTube and the VC, of course, I watch a lot of other people's vinyl videos, and I kind of had a running tab in my head of albums that look interesting that I see people show, and I try to make a mental note whenever I'm out shopping, either online or in person, to look for those albums. And this first one was shown recently by Naz Nomad, David Michael, who's from the VC. He's one of my favorite VCers, and he showed this album by a guy named Louise Gasca. The name of this album is called For Those Who Chant. He is a trumpeter. But what is interesting about this album, what caught my interest anyway, I don't know if you can read all those credits, but the backing musicians for this is the original Santana band. Carlos Santana, Neil Schon play on this. Greg Rowley, he's from the original band. Mike Shreve is the drummer for Santana. Mike Carabello, he plays the congas from Santana. And it's basically, let me show you the inside of the gatefold here. It's basically a Santana album with a jazz trumpet over the top. So it sounded interesting. I'm a big fan of Santana, and I'll give it a shot. So I'll let you know about that one. I don't really have any Genesis albums until now, the one I'm about to show you. I don't know why. I never really got into Genesis. It's not that I don't dislike them. It's just never been something that I felt like pursuing. But one of the blogs that I read talks about this album. It's a double live album. Came out in 1977 called Seconds Out. Peter Gabriel had left the band. Phil Collins took over lead vocals, and Steve Hackett was still playing in the band. This was before they became a trio. So, let me show you the gatefold. Almost all these albums this time were gatefold. I like Genesis. I've never really delved into their catalog beyond the radio hits. So, and I have very little, what's the word I'm looking for? I have very little experience with the Peter Gabriel era, and a lot of the songs from this album are from the Peter Gabriel era. So, it'll be a little bit of a discovery for this one. So, Seconds Out by Genesis. This came in the mail this week. And again, just before I decided to set up the phone to make this album, this video, another package arrived in the mail just now. 3 more albums arrived, the first being the Final Cream album called Goodbye. This is a reissue from the 70s because it's got the old RSO label, which I always associate with the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, because this always has been the soundtrack for the Bee Gees and Saturday Night Fever. I know this wasn't originally released on that label, and sure enough, it's a gatefold. There you go. What can you really say about Cream at this point? I love them. And I think the only album I don't have by them is Disraeli Gears, but I'm sure someday I'll track that down eventually. Also under the heading of albums that were really hard to find, probably needlessly so, but I finally got, is the Greatest Hits collection by The Cure called Standing on a Beach, the singles. Gatefold. This one just arrived today. Can't tell you how bloody difficult it's been to get a Cure album. I can't tell you how many auctions I've lost trying to get not just this album, but any Cure album, because they just go. People just fight over these things. But luck prevailed. I was finally able to snag this copy, so at least I can say I have some Cure in my collection. I've always liked The Cure. My wife loves The Cure, so yeah. What can I say? This last album is a bit of an oddity. It's I saw it listing for it on eBay, and I tracked it down on YouTube. I was able to find the whole album. Somebody uploaded it, and it's really strange, but in a good way, kind of. I don't really know how to explain it. Let me show you the cover. It's by Mike Nesmith. Now, hopefully some of you are old enough to know who Mike Nesmith is. For those of you who aren't, he was in a band called the Monkees in the 60s, and they had a TV show. It's not much to the back cover, but there it is. And in 1968, which is when this album came out, Mike started releasing solo albums. And this is his first solo album, The Wichita Train Whistle Sings. It's all instrumental, and it's all very 60s sounding. It would be like a soundtrack for a movie out of the 60s or a TV show. The Wrecking Crew plays on this, and if you don't know who the Wrecking Crew are, there's videos on YouTube, but they were like they were a collection of top studio musicians who played on tons of hit singles and #1 singles and albums. This is, of course, the gatefold. Nothing. Oh, look, I can peek through the hole. Nothing too fantastic here, but I got it because it was cheap. It's kind of an oddity. It's not like I'm a big fan of solo Mike Nesmith, but I just liked it. That's all. Sometimes you don't really need a reason. If you like something, just get it. Okay, so much for being a short video. 16 minutes. Wow, I guess I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Hopefully this will upload. Hopefully it didn't go too long. We'll be back hopefully sooner than later. I'm trying to do at least one of these a week if I can. And I'll see what I come up with next time. So if you made it this far, thank you. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you next time. Peace.